Biodiversity serves as the well of all biological resources available to us. Each species has an important role to play in the ecosystem. All living things rely on each other for what each other offer to ensure natural sustainability for life forms. For instance, the human being is dependent on plants and animals for their shelter, food, and clothes. The richness of biodiversity makes our planet sweet for the survival each of the species living here. Biodiversity loss was describing the decline in the number, genetic, various species and the biological communities in a given area. This loss in the variety of life can lead to a breakdown in the functioning of the ecosystem where the decline has happened.
When we talk about biodiversity loss, there is no denying that the culprit behind this is none other than the mankind. It all started when humans rapidly increased in number. The number of people back in 1950 was estimated at around 2.6 billion. Shockingly, as of March 2020, there are about 7.8 billion people living on Earth, more than double its number in just 50 years. The fact that it took 200,000 years of human history to reach world's population of 1 billion people and only 200 years more to reach 7 billion shows that the world's population is increasing dramatically. The demand for food, shelter, comfort and clothing are growing as the world's population rise. Overexploitation of resources and land use changes in order to fulfill the demands of increasing human population cause habitat destruction. The forests have been cut down to give way to agriculture, industries, housing developments, urbanization to get timber and other resources. Not only humans destroy land habitat, they also destroy coastal wetland habitat and cut down mangrove trees, which cause ocean use changes. The continuous conversion of natural and untouched habitat into human-use lands lead to less and less spaces left for organisms to live, which can be linked to the drop of biodiversity. Besides increasing demand of resource, waste production and environmental degradation are also the result of overpopulation. They become worsened due to human consumption habits, further development in technologies, and poor resource management. All these factors lead to several environmental stress, which include the growing loss of biodiversity. Pollution poses another threat to biodiversity. Waterborne pollution caused by the leaching of harmful chemical substances from factories, agricultural activities, and also untreated sewage that is released into water body are the common problems of biodiversity loss crisis. The reproduction viability of organisms that happen to be in contact with the contaminated water are prone to decrease due to disruption in biological biochemical substances. Therefore, as the reproduction rate of a certain species is lower than their death rate, extinction may threaten them. Moreover, sound and light pollution emitted by the cities can also interfere with the reproduction pattern of organisms that are not able to adapt to the urban environment. Sonar pollution in the ocean can also affect marine mammal survival, as the sonar produced by submarines, for example, can interfere with the health of marine mammals. Indeed, the interruption created by humans by polluting our mother nature has caused biodiversity to face the consequences.
Natural forces can act to destroy habitat, species, and individual organisms. Often, a very important factor is neglected, which is the introduction of allochthonous species. Species whose origin in other geographic areas and therefore have not adapted through the long natural selection process to the new environment in which they are introduced. The introduction of non-native species into an ecosystem can threaten endemic wildlife, either as predator or competing for resource. Example, the red-eared slider was imported into Italy from the United States as animal pet. But when people started to free them in the ponds because they become too big, this triggered a competitive mechanism between the American slider and the Europe pond turtle. Volcanic eruption can cause biodiversity loss. On May 19, 1980, a major volcanic eruption occurred at Mount St. Helens, the most destructive volcanic event ever recorded in the history of the United States. The volcanic eruption estimated killed as many as 1,500 elk, 5,000 deer, and 12 million salmon.
The basic purpose of protected area in avoiding loss might seem straightforward, but it presents difficulty for policymakers and practitioners. One difficulty is the little is known about how much difference most protected areas actually make. This is in strong contrast to fields such as medicine, education, and development aid, in which program evaluation is firmly established. So, difficulty for policymakers and practitioners are the ones that make ineffective management practice. Secondly, because of implementation gaps between the national, regional authority, and the local community. For example, the current biodiversity conservation strategy in China is based on a model in which the central authority that make rules and the local government implement them. This approach is problematic because it creates overlapping duty and authority, poorly defined responsibility, and the implementation gaps between the national, regional authority, and the local community that must implement the plans and that should benefit for them. In particular, dilution of the authority for conservation measures among multiple levels of government weakens the participation by local community and hinder the development of diversified indigenous institutions and governance that would allow adaptation of national programs to local constraints and opportunity. This shows barriers among them.
Biodiversity loss is a major global threat to the future of our planet and our generation. There are lots of things we, who as represent the world, can do to help ease the pressure on this loss of biodiversity. What are the things that we can do to tackle biodiversity loss? The first thing is be good to our climate. Many species are not so mobile, not so inventive, and cannot so easily adapt to the change brought on by our massive emissions of greenhouse gases. These species that have nowhere to run are gradually being pushed toward extinction. So, to save their life, we can make less pollution, like planting trees, decreasing energy, electricity, and water consumption. We also can do more walk, ride, or carpool and less drive. Other than that, please don't waste and dump the rest of industry into river or sea. Next, don't buy bad souvenir. What is bad souvenir? Bad souvenir was made from the skin, fur, bone, shell, or beak of an endangered species. If you buy it, you are just going to encourage whoever killed it, craft it, or made it to do it all over again and again. Do you know that 80% of the world's biodiversity lives in the sea? Nowadays, 75% of the world fisheries are full of overexploit, but there are ways and means to keep our ocean alive. Finally, just buy sustainable seafood at restaurant or at home. All you have to do is choose fish which are sustainable, avoiding endangered, and prefer seafood label with the blue MSC, which is mean Marine Stewardship Council logo.
Let's look on how a country should do to tackle biodiversity loss. Nowadays, nature and biodiversity are in a worrisome state. What do countries need to do to counter this issue? One of the crucial things is by policy reform that are important to ensure natural resource conservation and prevent biodiversity loss. Strong political commitment is needed to land reform and redistribution policies by the national government of the region. Besides, a country needs a strong commitment by agricultural and environment ministers to intensify agriculture buffer zones around the most threatened forest land. For example, in Burma, the forestry extraction management did plant of fast-growing industrial plantation trees that can provide an alternative source of food supply to the natural forest. This could reduce pressure for opening up new logging concessions and would protect invasive species there. Besides, a country plays an important role in protecting biodiversity by doing a habitat management. This management may involve the removal of alien species and restoring natural ecological processes to the area. For example, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, the active group of habitat management that prescribe forests ensures that there are always checkpoints of the right age has shown an increasing population of forests and could prevent wildfire in forests.
Most of the world biodiversity occur within developing countries that require donor support to build their conservation capacity. Unfortunately, some of these countries experience high level of political corruption, which may limit the success of conservation projects by reducing effective funding level and resulting priorities. However, governments play an important role to make sure that their country can solve the problem due to the loss of biodiversity. There are a few steps that governments can use to reduce the loss of biodiversity. The action that will deliver multiple benefits in reducing biodiversity decline, firstly, is conservation reserve system. Government need to report on the development and implementation of good practice management system to maintain and recover biodiversity in the public conservation reserve system and establish national management protocols. Secondly is off-reserve and private land management. Firstly is intensive land use, where governments need to ensure that state or territory planning policies fully integrated biodiversity and ecosystem conservation in land and use and development decisions that will result in change or intensification of use. Besides that, governments need to agree to take action to stop broad-scale clearing for a new intensified agriculture development in the intensive land use zone. Next is governments establish a stewardship program in the intensive land use zone by developing and implementing a national program using market-based instruments to deliver targets biodiversity outcomes. Secondly is extensive land use zone, where governments commit to developing and implementing a biodiversity conservation incentive programs that provide a range of instruments to bring out desired change for maintaining or recovering biodiversity. Besides that, governments needs to review existing incentives for bringing about the biodiversity management on indigenous lands and put in place an incentive scheme where investment is aimed primarily at maintaining and recovering biodiversity and linked to security of tenure. Lastly is public land management, where in exercise public land custodial responsibilities, governments need to ensure high biodiversity value are identified and managed appropriately.
Over the years, we have been destroying our earth. Day by day, animals go extinct, resources are being damaged, and we willingly to cover our mouths and ears to Mother Nature's change. Our world is getting worse than ever before because of us. It's not wise to the environment. We humans should always save the world. It is not too late to save the earth. Do not despair, as there is still hope. Little change can make a great impact on changing the world for the better. We know what we need to do.